Hi, welcome to another Plus One Daily. We've got a round table going on today. Blaine's here, Rich is here. We're going to have some fun. How are you guys doing? I'm setting that up like, this is all professional and stuff, right? What I was going to talk about today, and it's interesting Rich is here, is you actually shared the video with me. So I'm reading this book called Finish by John Acuff, and he talks about anybody can get started. Like, it doesn't take a genius to get started. The hard part is finishing, so seeing something through. And it got me thinking, yeah, that's true, but the problem is that we talk ourselves out of actually taking action because we're trying to be perfect. Something in the book he talks about is perfection it loves isolation. It loves to talk yourself out of doing something. I can't do something perfect, so I'm not even going to try. I can't create this, so I'm not even going to try. So what are some strategies, throw that out. What are some strategies that have helped you guys tackle getting started? Because even though we know you got to finish this stuff, just getting started seems to be the toughest stumbling block and hurdle for a lot of people online.
I think my biggest thing with getting started, this goes back a long time, is going from talking about it to actually doing it. And the biggest thing that has helped me is putting it on paper in some form, and that's why I use mind maps, and I'm sure it's been brought up 1,000 times. And MindMeister is what I use primarily, and that allows me to map out everything and just put it out there and go, okay, well, now I know I need to get this done first, so let's start here. And it's starting. People don't realize, so you've got where you're at now, and you have to get to here, and they try to go from point A to point B, but you can't. Right. You have to go from point A to AA to AB, and then you have to slowly step your way up. And that's what I think people look at as the biggest. Oh, it's such a big hurdle to go from here to here, whereas you can make smaller steps along the way to get everything done. And it's not going to be perfect by any means, and it'll still get done nonetheless.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I'm old school. I use Franklin Covey, but same thing. You look at going, like Blaine was saying, you're starting down here, and you want to get way up here, and that's a huge step.
Right. But
once you realize you can break that out, and Robert Blake talked about that as well. Don't worry about that 100th article. Worry about the first one. And you have to break it down into small steps that you can actually achieve, so that you can see that you're making progress.
What he talked about, it's cool you brought that up. First of all, if anybody's not familiar with Roberto Blake, you got to go and Google this guy. He's just a legend. He's young. He's a young guy. I mean, I'm sure he's early 30s or something, maybe even late 20s. He's not experienced as an old guy like Rich. No, I'm just joking. But what he talked about, he talked about this about a year or so ago. He made a blog post, and he was talking about just get 1,000 pieces of content. You put 1,000 pieces of content out there, then you're going to start getting some traction. Well, he took it another step further in yesterday's video. He talked about just getting 100 videos out or 100 blog posts, and don't expect applause. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about, Blaine, and you too, Rich, is that we want to go from here to here and get all the accolades in the world. We want to make that $100,000 a year, just like that. It's like we don't want to take that journey. We don't want to get 100 pieces of content out there with probably 0 to no traction, because our ego is telling us, if I'm going to take this risk and put myself out there, I want massive rewards. But I think the problem is that the reward comes from within. The reward is not external. It's got to be internal. Oh, I'm doing this because I want to do it. I'm doing this because I love doing it. Look at the little tiny pieces, the incremental increases I'm getting instead of shooting for the moon, right? Like you got to start somewhere. And I think that we talk ourselves out of actually taking that risk to put ourselves exposed to the world. If that makes any sense. That makes any sense. I just choked on myself. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And everybody just wants to get to the end result, but there's always a journey along the way. And that journey consists of learning new things, messing up things, failing, learning how to fix everything and go forward. And speaking like monetarily, like you had said, making $100,000 a year, first you have to make $1.
Right. Yeah.
You got to make $1, and then you compound that, and you keep going. And it's the same thing with everything that we do, whether it be something as simple as trying to build a business online, or even building a bicycle, or building a fish tank stand like I just did. You have to take that first step and figure out where to go. And of course, there's manuals and instruction and tons of ways to get help along the way. You still have to do those steps yourself and move forward with it. So,
and it all takes time, which is what people don't want to admit. Mick Jagger, when they got their very first album, he was interviewed, and they said, "How does it feel to be an overnight success?" He says, "It's amazing. It only took me 12 years of playing 8 hours a day to get here."
Right. Yeah.
First, you had to learn how to play the guitar or sing, which, well, it's debatable on whether you can do either. Damn sure can't dance. But, you know, everybody, they look at the time factor, and they say, "I don't have time for that." Well, no, maybe you don't have time, you know, right now, but like the video was saying, if you just take 15, 30 minutes a day and dedicate it to what you want to accomplish, pretty soon you're there. You know, you're starting to see returns. And, you know, you have to break this stuff up. Blaine said he built a fish tank stand. You know, first he had to cut the pieces, figure out how they went together, and start nailing the bottom together, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't just, you know, poof, here it is. You know, you've really got to, first off, decide you're going to do it.
Yeah.
And then sit down and figure out the steps.
Why do you? Well, okay. So I'm gonna give you some quotes that I found. I shared one in Skype with you guys last night, but these are some quotes from John Gordon, really big, successful author, a guy that I really follow and enjoy reading. He came up with 3 examples of how you guys talked about having patience and actually taking time. So Starbucks, this is a couple of examples he gives. Starbucks did not get their 5th store open until 13 years of the company existing. Sam Walton didn't open his 2nd Walmart until 7 years after starting the first store. John Wooden, famous coach from UCLA, he didn't win his first national title until his 16th season of coaching the Bruins. So when I say stuff like that, I throw that out and John tweets these things and we just talk about it. Does that, to the average person, does that say like, man, that's so out of my reach? Or does that inspire you? Like hearing that, like I'll ask you, Blaine, does that go like, man, I got to keep on keeping on? Or is that like 7 years? Man, I got bills to pay. I can't wait 7 years to open my 2nd website or something like that. Like how do you take reading or hearing something like that and combining it with what we're talking about today?
With stuff like that, and we know that online business can be exponentially faster than a brick and mortar business, but it still applies nonetheless. And when you look at it, and so I worked at Walmart when I was like 15, 16, so I know the story of Sam Walton and all that stuff. So I understand everything. And you got to realize that when he was building it, he didn't do everything correctly. Everything wasn't perfect the first go around, so he had to figure everything out and build it up from there. And Walmart was the first chain store to basically warehouse the product versus only having the stuff there or it being mail order or whatnot. So they figured out how to warehouse the product to make it cheaper to save the end user money. But that takes time. Like you had to figure out how to store the stuff, how to get it there, how to pre-purchase it or make deals with the seller or the creator of the product and go from there. And that does take time without a doubt. And there's a lot of learning steps that he had to go through. He wasn't an expert in business, in marketing and brick and mortar and just an expert in Walmart, we'll call it, from the very beginning. He had to learn along the way. He opened up his store and it grew and it grew and it grew and he got better as time goes on. But you can't just expect to go and just be perfect the first time, without a doubt. It takes time. It takes practice. You have to learn a few things along the way and you have to mess up because if you don't mess up, then you'll never know. It's the same thing with growing up as a human. Like we get sick so that our body can defend against that later on.
Right.
So you learn from your mistakes so as to not make those mistakes again. And streamline what you're doing in order to help make you more money, a better business person, better marketer, whatever your goal is to do.
Right.
You have to fail your way to success. You have to have the failures. That's how you learn.
Right.
You know, and it when you personally, when I hear stories like Starbucks and Walmart, it just means that, yeah, I gotta settle in, go for the long haul. It's taken me 7.5 years to build this business that I'm currently doing offline. 7.5 years. And I wanted to give up a whole lot of times, let me tell you. But I knew that there was something at the end of the, at the end of the tunnel, and I hoped like hell it wasn't a train. But for most people, I honestly think that they look at that and they go, man, you're right. I don't have time for this.
Right.
I gotta find a shortcut. It has to be a shortcut. And in the process, taking all the shortcuts, it usually takes them longer to get nowhere than if they would have just said, okay, let's see what we can do.
Hi, Tish. Tish snuck in here, so I'm just going to say hi to her. We're talking about just getting started and kind of going off that video that I shared with Plus One and on Skype earlier today. Hi. Yeah, the Roberto Blake one. So the questions being asked is, why are we talking ourselves out of actually doing things, actually starting stuff? And Blaine and Rich were talking about, incremental steps that people need to take. For example, I use this exercise all the time. I show people are trying to get to $100,000 a year. And if you break that down, that's, $273 a day, 365 days a year, basically gets you six figures. Well, you first got to make $2.73 a day, because if you make $2.73 every single day for a year, that's an extra $1,000 a year, which anybody will take. You got to go $27 a day, which will get you $10,000 a year. So you got to grow slowly. You can't go from $0 to $273 overnight. It takes time. And I think using the examples of the Starbucks and the Walmarts and the John Woodens, people get scared because they don't see that return in a month from now. They don't look at it as, hey, this is something I'm going to work on and it's going to pay off down the road. I want immediate returns. So the stumbling block for a lot of people, specifically people trying to start businesses online, is that they hear these stories of riches overnight, and they hear I'm going to make $1 million in 30 days or less, and they give up if they don't get it. But they forget about the journey. They forget about the failing, like Rich said, the constant failure to find the way that does work. So
baby steps.
Sorry?
Baby steps.
Exactly. Yes. Small little baby steps. Hashtag that. Yes.
Isaiah baby steps.
Isaiah baby steps. Yeah, he's actually sleeping now, so he's not crying, which is good. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, and we decided to record this, so sorry. So. Sorry, Rich. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, over here in the corner of my office that you can't see is a huge stack of all the 3D print prototypes that failed.
Right.
There's probably 150 of them over there, and if I'd have given up after the very first failure, I would have never got to the point I am now.
So I'll ask you then, what keeps you going then? What is you see this, you bust your butt and then something fails. What is it that you tell yourself, or something, this aha moment that says, I got to try again? What is that? This
is the very first one I ever made. You think that's going to hold water? Right. And what kept me going was I knew I could do it. In the back of my mind, I knew I could overcome. And it's something that I've worked for. It's something that I really want.
So it's like positive self-talk type stuff,
yeah, pretty much. And throwing things around a lot, But I think that you have to actually really want it.
Right.
And not just, oh, yeah, a shiny object, I want that. It has to come from inside. You have to actually want this and be willing to take the time to dedicate to it to achieve it. I know that, you know, talking on things like online, like a blog post. I can sit there and look at that blank page on my screen for hours on end going, oh, wow, I want to write something, but I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the problem. Most people don't know where to begin. They don't know how to start that title. They don't know how to, you know, what to put in there. They don't know where to go next. And then they do. They hear these stories about these guys, you know, hey, look at my new Lamborghini. I opened this business up yesterday, and today I bought a Lambo, and tomorrow, you know, I'm buying an island, and yada, yada, yada. And that doesn't happen. You know, Mike Vilsain made $1 million in one weekend. It only cost him $970,000 to do it. You know, by the time he was done, he made net 30 grand out of $1 million. And, you know, but the story is that he made $1 million in a weekend, and everybody goes, wow, that's what I want. They don't look at what it took to get there. All they do is they look at that final product and they say, damn, yeah. And I think that we've got to get people to realize that that's not life. Unless you win the lottery, which, yes, you stand a better chance of being struck by lightning twice than winning the lottery. You're not going to get rich overnight.
True. What about Blaine's idea of mind mapping? I'll throw this to you, Blaine. I mean, this when you mention that's a strategy that I've used for creating a lot of my websites, and I also use that technique that I've taught people for years and years about having 3 achievable goals every day and doing those 3 things and crossing it off. So how do you combine that to saying, just like what we're talking about with Rich, is like seeing the steps that you got to take so you don't get overwhelmed? Like using, like, what would be something, let's say, okay, I'll throw it out to you. You want to create a blog. Let's say you want to start a blog, but you're not really, how would you use a mind map or some kind of white, like, you know, blank piece of paper, something to list out the action steps needed to get it started? What would be something you would put down, for example?
So getting it started as far as writing it in there, or
just building
the entire blog itself?
Writing that first post. Like, what would be your action steps?
To mind map it out, I mean, you've got the centerpiece of the mind map, and this is through MindMeister. So it's going to be called blog or Blaine's blog or whatever we're going to call it. And then from there, we're just going to map out each single piece that you have to do. So the first one's going to be like, you need a domain name, obviously, and then hosting, and then design. And this is all before you even get to content itself.
Right.
And then from hosting, what I'll do is you create little pieces from it, and you'll be like, all right, so our domain name, like you'll be like, all right, so GoDaddy currently is 99 cents. This place is $1.50, so forth and so on. So which one do I want to choose? And you pick one from there. And you take steps and you make them smaller each as you go. And as they become smaller, they become much, much more achievable and easier to grasp.
Exactly.
So even something as simple as getting a domain. All right, well, there's 1,000 places that I can get a domain from, and that can be overwhelming to some people. All right, well, this one has this price, this one has this price, this one has this price, so forth and so on. And you're like, all right, well, that one's got that price, so now it's done. Now I know where I'm buying my domain from.
Nice.
It's the same thing with getting down to like content. All right, so what do I want my blog to be about? Well, I want it to be about everything that I do marketing. All right, so what do I do marketing? I do programming, I do advertising, I do videos, I do this, I do that. All right, so what type of programming do I do? And you take that and you list that down. So I do this, this, and this. And then you just keep breaking it down. Now you've got a list of 40, 50 topics that you can easily talk about versus one broad topic. And you can get super specific. And the more specific you get with stuff, the more interested of an audience you're going to get as well, especially with writing a blog.
Because you're not trying to do a wide net to capture everybody. You're trying to basically fishing line, like one fish at a time. And that's a really good strategy for building a tribe, building a community. Is you can't try this, wide net. And that's. I'll be brutally honest with you guys. I mean, and this is funny because I'm doing this video. I'm going to record it and upload it to the Plus One Daily Facebook group. But I have a lot of problems with my fishnet. Let's say for Plus One Daily, personal development is a massive, huge topic. So for me, I have trouble going, okay, what do I really want? Well, I love to talk about live streaming. I love to talk about what books I'm reading. I love to talk about, funnels, et cetera, et cetera. But that's, again, still really wide. So how can I target it down? And that's something I struggle with, because +1 to me, the big picture is personal development, but there's a whole lot of smaller things I can focus on, and finding that target. It's tough, man, because you're like, well, just like you said, you start writing it down. You're like, oh, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. Well, why don't I just focus on one thing and start on that one thing, right? Like years ago, it was like, well, Rich has kind of slapped me around and said, dude, like, why don't you just start writing about these programs you use every day? No one else is doing it. And I got into that tiny niche and that small niche, and I focused and I did everything I could to become really, really good at that one thing. And then it made it, like you said, simplified it. It made it easier for me to focus, because I wasn't trying to be all things to everybody. I was just trying to be targeted to that. So I think that's a really good strategy for if you're trying to build a blog, you're trying to build a business, really narrow it down. Because when you narrow it down, your mind map, and you'll find the action steps needed to take, instead of going, oh, I want to be all things to all people, and then you get pissed off and you give up.
That made me think of, I don't know if it's a Bruce Lee quote or if it's related to Bruce Lee or whatever, but it's basically, don't fear the man that has practiced 1,000 kicks one time, but fear the man that has practiced one kick 1,000 times.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a good one. It must be Bruce Lee if it's a kick.
I'm pretty sure it's a Bruce Lee related. I don't know if he said it or somebody said it about him, but it's definitely related to Bruce Lee in some way, shape, or form. And that's what it is. You're narrowing down, getting to that specific piece, and getting really, really good at it.
Yeah.
Nobody can be the end-all, be-all on everything. It's impossible. Can't do it.
Drive myself nuts trying to do that.
You know, so yeah, you got to find that one thing that you're really good at, whatever it is, and focus on that, and then you can expand on it as you go. You know, like John, you know, he said he started off writing that about nothing but TEs. Well, look at what he's doing today. You know, he's expanded on that niche and added other components and grown from that. Well, that's your mind map. You start off here, and then, you know, you branch out over here, and that leads to another one over here. And pretty soon, you know, you have this entire diagram of where you're going, and how you're going to get there. You start the ideas start to you know, come together, and you figure out how you're actually going to achieve it. And that can take an hour, or it could take a decade. I mean, it all depends on where you're headed.
Another thing I do with the mind maps is, because you can easily get, and I do it all the time, get 40, 50 different things out there, and then you just stare at it and you're confused. You're like, okay, so which one of these do I pick first?
Right.
And that's when I basically rate them all, and I'm like, all right, so this one I think is the easiest, so I'm going to rate it number 1, and then I'll just go down the line and just do a 1 to 10 rating from there, and then I'll figure out all the ones, and I'll be like, and then I'll just rate those specifically. So I'll have 3 or 4 of those, and you can narrow that down. And eventually you get to the number 1, you're like, all right, well, that's where I'm starting then. That's what I got to do.
Brian Tracy talks about that a lot in a lot of his training, taking your goals and you know, what you want to achieve and putting them into like A, B, C type things. So your A lists, your B lists, and your C lists. And listen, you're not going to be able to buy an ebook that'll teach you how to do that. You know, you can listen to us talk about this for hours on end. The only way to do that is to really do some soul searching. Use a mind map, get some ideas down, literally white piece of paper if you don't want to use a mind map, and just write them down. Gut check. What do I love? What am I passionate about? What is something I would, you know, do for years and years and years, even if I didn't get paid? That was a big clue for me. I could talk about business online, and I could be in this kind of environment, a live stream environment, a recorded environment, and I might not make a dime from this, but I'm okay with it because I love it. I love the talking about it. I love the discussion about it. So that, to me, live streaming, talking about business, that's in my A list. That's in my A goals. I want to do this. That's what I want to focus on. Blogging's another A goal, A list thing. So, you know, what's B and C? Well, B and C to me would be, you know, learning the intricacies of Facebook ads. I have no desire at all. I go to Justin for that. I have no, you know, like there's certain things that I know it's part of my big picture, because I'll need advertising to get traffic to my live streams and stuff, but I'm not going to focus on that because my passion is not there. Doesn't mean I don't need, just like Rich said, it's a branch out, but you got to focus on what you really love, what you're really good at, what you would do without getting paid for. That was the big clue for me. I don't know if you guys felt the same way, but Yeah.
My biggest problem is not outsourcing. I try to do too much of it myself.
Yeah.
You know, so I've got, you know, when it comes to mind mapping, I have to force myself to say, you know what? I don't know PHP 7.
Right.
So I've got to hire somebody that does. Otherwise, I'm going to spend the next 6 months trying to learn PHP 7. And then it just pushes me that much further back. And I think a lot of people are afraid of outsourcing for some reason. I don't even know why I don't do it. So you know, it's hard. I can't speak for other people, but we can't do it all. And so we have to be willing to ask for help. I think that's it primarily, is I'm kind of stubborn. I don't like asking for help. But we have to at times. If you're actually going to get there, it's going to take some help from other people to do it. And along that same line, you also have to listen to what they're trying to tell you. And people seem to, and I know I do it, I'm sure everybody does, you start to believe your own hype at some point, and you are reluctant to listen to the people that say, man, you need to be doing this. And that's another stumbling block that you have to overcome, your own ego in all of this, I think. At some point, you're going to have to face your own ego and realize that if I'm going to get to this $100,000 a year, well, I gotta straighten up a little.
Yeah, that's an ego thing, right? I mean, you never want to admit it, so it takes a maturity level, I think, to say, you know, I need help with this, and it opens you up too. I mean, this is the thing, when I stopped trying to be the jack of all trades, and I focused, and I let other people do what they were really good at, so I could focus on what I was. This is the 3 vital functions that I always talk about in the training stuff, is finding those 3 things that you're really, really good at and focusing on them. It's critical. But again, going back to the original point of the talk, was that we talk ourselves out of it. We convince ourselves that we don't even need to get started because we're going to fail. So let's not do anything, because then no one's going to point fingers at us. You're not putting yourself out there. So it's definitely a struggle. I'm going to shut down the recording because it's been like about 30 minutes now, and I don't want it to be too long and bore people to death. So I'm going to shut the recording down. Blaine, Rich, Tish, thanks for coming to the recording side of this. But we're still going to rock out. I'm just going to stop the recording for all the YouTube people that are watching this going, man, these guys talk a lot. Anyways, thanks for watching.